The wind outside snarled against the cabin like a living thing. It hurled snow in wild, lashing waves across the windows, blanketing the world in white silence. Inside, the fire cracked softly. Warmth radiated through the room, touching wood, wool, and skin alike. The man sat in his worn armchair, the pages of a half-read book resting in his lap, one hand curled around a cooling mug. Then, a sound, software tentative. Scratch, scratch. He froze. His mind offered simple explanations. Branches, shifting ice, the natural language of a storm. But storms didn't whimper. The second sound cut through the stillness like a thread pulled too tight. A low, muffled cry. Not human, not far. He set the mug down with a trembling hand. Instinct flickered to life like the fire beside him. Old, trained, alert. He moved toward the door, bare feet pressing against the cabin's creaking floorboards. As he neared, the scratching stopped. Only the wind remained, moaning low and relentless. He opened the door a crack. The wind roared in immediately, sweeping snow across the threshold. He raised his flashlight. A shadow huddled on the porch. A German shepherd, frozen in place. Its body trembled with the effort of standing. Its coat was encrusted with frost, fur stiff with ice. He saw ribs pressing through the skin, eyes glazed, but not yet empty. The dog took one stumbling step forward, then collapsed. He dropped the light. It hit the wood with a thud. No hesitation, no thought. He scooped the body into his arms. It was like lifting snow itself, heavy with silence, stiff with cold. The dog didn't resist. He didn't move. "Hang on, buddy," the man whispered, voice cracking as he kicked the door shut behind them. He laid the shepherd on a thick rug near the fire. The warmth seemed a distant, unreachable thing. Blankets, water, towels. Action replaced fear. He wrapped the dog in everything soft he owned. His fingers trembled as he dabbed away ice from the animal's coat. He whispered without knowing why, "You're safe now." Still, the dog didn't stir, until one ear twitched. A tiny, involuntary motion. The man nearly wept from the sight. He kept working, kept watching. The fire crackled, the storm screamed. And somewhere in the middle of that chaos, a heartbeat held on. Minutes passed in quiet urgency. The man rubbed the shepherd's paws, willing warmth into lifeless toes. He switched to a clean towel, pressing gently along the legs, the sides, under the ears. The fur, matted and damp, yielded slowly under his touch, as if deciding whether to trust him. The dog's breathing was shallow, but it was there. That was enough. He moved to the kitchen, poured lukewarm water into a bowl, and knelt again at the shepherd's side. "Come on, just a sip," he coaxed. The dog didn't respond, but his nose twitched. That twitch alone was enough to ignite a fragile flicker of hope. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" he murmured. "Where'd you come from, huh? How far did you walk?" No tag, no collar, only scars, faint ones across the chest and legs like old memories carved into the flesh. The man draped a second blanket over him. He stayed beside the fire, watching, waiting, and then the dog opened his eyes, just for a second, brown, deep, and dulled with exhaustion, but focused, on him, their gazes locked. In that instant something passed between them, not trust, not yet, but recognition, a flicker of understanding. The man didn't speak, he only nodded. "You're not alone anymore." Outside, the storm battered the cabin, but inside the room glowed gently, an island of warmth in a frozen world. The shepherd shifted slightly, inching closer to the fire. His tail twitched once, just once. A flick of life. A tiny, defiant heartbeat that refused to give in. The man felt his throat tighten. He reached out, resting his hand just behind the shepherd's ear. The dog didn't flinch, not this time. By morning, the cabin was wrapped in silence. The storm had passed, leaving the world hushed beneath heavy snow. But inside, warmth lingered, gentle, slow, alive. The man hadn't slept. He sat curled on the floor near the fire, one hand resting lightly on the German shepherd's back. The dog, still wrapped in layers of blankets, had begun to breathe deeper, more steadily. Every rise and fall of his chest felt like a fragile victory. When the man finally rose to stretch, his knees stiff, the shepherd stirred. A soft sound escaped him, half sigh, half groan, as he shifted position. Not much, just enough to show he was still trying. "You're doing good," the man said softly, almost reverently. "You made it through the night." In the kitchen, he warmed some leftover chicken broth, stirring slowly, as though cooking for a friend. When he returned, bowl in hand, the shepherd's eyes were open again, still tired, still guarded, but present. He set the bowl near the dog's snout. "Try a little, just a taste." The shepherd sniffed. Then, with an effort that seemed to drain him, he reached out and took a few tentative laps. The man exhaled in relief, kneeling down to stroke the dog's head. "Good boy," he whispered. "You're safe. You're home, if you want to be." He meant it, and strangely, he realized, he hoped the dog would stay. The fire crackled, snow melted from the rooftop above, and for a moment, the only sound was the soft lapping of warm broth and the quiet thud of the shepherd's tail, thumping faintly against the rug. Then, another sound. Scratch. Not from inside. From the door. The man froze, bowl in hand. The scratching came again. Software hesitant, familiar. His heart sank. Not because he feared danger, but because he recognized the sound. The same fragile plea he had heard the night before. He stood slowly, casting one last glance at the shepherd by the fire. The dog's ears twitched. He had heard it too. A shared tension passed between them. The man moved to the door and cracked it open. The cold slapped him immediately, biting through the cabin's warmth. And then he saw it. Another German shepherd, smaller, younger. Its fur was matted, its body trembling just like the first. No collar, no voice, just a gaze, wide, wet, pleading. Oh no. He knelt slowly, carefully. The pup didn't run, didn't bark. It simply stood there, eyes locked on his, as if saying, "Please, I don't know where else to go." "Come on," he whispered. "It's okay. You're not too late." The pup stepped forward. Snow clung to its belly. It moved stiffly, paw over paw, like every motion hurt. As it crossed the threshold, the warmth of the fire seemed to pull it in like gravity. The older shepherd lifted his head. Their eyes met. And then, a tail wag, slow. Barely there, but unmistakable. The pup whimpered softly and curled up beside the older dog, pressing its head against his side. The older shepherd let out a slow breath and leaned his head over the younger one's neck. The man stood frozen by the door, watching, processing. "They know each other," he murmured. "You're not just strays. You're family." He closed the door against the cold and wrapped them both in another blanket. The cabin, once so quiet, now breathed with new life. Two shapes lay curled on the rug, one larger, one smaller. Their breathing synced, slow and cautious. Every now and then, the older dog would nuzzle the younger, a gesture of reassurance, of memory, of survival. The man sat beside them watching. His hand rested gently atop the blanket that covered them both. "How did you find me?" he whispered. His voice cracked, as if the silence that had defined his life was unraveling. There was no answer. only the soft tick of the clock and the occasional snap from the fire. He rose again, this time to warm more broth. The younger dog watched him now, nervous, alert, but not afraid. The older one, too, tracked his movements, eyes following him like shadows clinging to light. When he returned with the second bowl, the pup sniffed eagerly. It lapped up the broth with greater strength than the first had shown. The man smiled. "There's still some fight in you." He couldn't stop staring, not just at their bodies, but the bond between them. The way the older dog rested a paw protectively across the younger's front leg. The way the pup didn't flinch at touch. They'd been through something big, something bad. The scars were clearer in the daylight, on the older one's back legs, across his ribs. The pup had none, but its body told another story. Thin, underfed, pushed to the brink. The man sat again, nearer this time. He didn't try to pet them, not yet. He just sat. The fire glowed, the wind had stilled, and in that hush, something sacred unfolded. The shepherd, slowly, purposefully, stretched his paw outward and let it rest on the man's boot. A single touch, not for warmth, not by accident, but a sign. You're part of this now. Outside, the storm had passed, but the cold remained. The forest stood still, heavy with snow and secrets. The man bundled in layers, eyes flicking toward the fire, one last time. The dogs were asleep, curled close, their bodies finally still, breathing in sync. But he couldn't shake it. The feeling that their appearance wasn't chance. Two shepherds, both in desperate condition, arriving during the same blizzard. It wasn't coincidence. It was a message. He opened the cabin door carefully. The cold stung his skin like a warning. The snow was thick but soft now, blanketing the land in silence. And there they were. Tracks, two sets of paw prints, leading from the forest straight to his porch. Faint, partly buried, but there. And something else. A third trail. Human footprints. Larger, deeper, heavier. He crouched beside them, breath fogging. Whoever it was had walked with the dogs, then vanished. The tracks wove in and out of the paw prints like they were all together, until they weren't. The dogs had come out of the woods. The person had gone back in. The man's pulse quickened. He stepped into the trail. Crunch, crunch. Every sound was amplified. A distant crow call, a sigh of wind slipping between bare branches, his own heartbeat loud in his chest. He followed the path deeper, the trees closing around him. The tracks looped, staggered, stopped, then picked up again, like someone had been wandering, or searching, or hiding. And then, the forest opened, a clearing, snow undisturbed, except for one violent, churning place. A struggle, scuff marks, circles of paw prints, a deep depression in the snow where someone had fallen or been forced down. He approached it slowly. The air felt colder here, still. He crouched, brushing a glove across the snow, pressed tight, recently disturbed. Then he saw it, half buried. A leash, frayed, chewed. His breath caught. The dogs hadn't wandered. They had escaped. The man stood still for a long moment, holding the torn leash in his gloved hands. It was stiff with ice, the end jagged and frayed. Teeth marks, panic, desperation. Something had happened here, something awful. He rose slowly and scanned the clearing. No blood, no belongings, just silence and snow, and the weight of something lost. Then, a sound, software familiar. He turned, and there, emerging from the trees like a ghost of golden brown and frost, the older German shepherd. He stared at the dog, stunned. "You followed me?" The shepherd didn't bark right away. He just stood, watching, ears flicked, tail low, breath visible in short clouds. Then, a single sharp bark, urgent, He turned his head toward the woods, then back to the man. Another bark, and a step forward. The man didn't need more. "Okay," he whispered. "Show me." They moved through the trees, man and dog, leaving the clearing behind. The forest grew denser, shadows deeper. Sunlight barely touched the ground now. And then, the shepherd stopped. Before them stood a small structure, a shed. Its roof sagged, its walls were rotting. A single crooked window peered out like a blind eye. The man's stomach clenched. He stepped forward. The dog barked again, low this time, mournful. The door creaked as it opened. The scent hit him first. Damp wood, rusted metal, and something else. Something metallic. Inside, cages lined the wall. Empty, but not forgotten. Matted fur clung to corners. Blankets lay chewed and frozen. Rust-stained bowls overturned on the floor. A prison. He turned to the shepherd, who had stepped just inside. Tail tucked, ears flat. His entire body trembled, not from cold, but memory. This was where he had lived, where they both had. The man swallowed hard and whispered, "I'm so sorry." He didn't expect a response, but the shepherd stepped forward and laid his head gently against the man's leg. No words, just grief and trust. The man moved slowly through the shed, each step stirring dust and silence. The cages stood like ghosts, mute witnesses to pain. He ran his hand along one of the metal bars, bent, rusted, clawed. There had been a fight here, not just to escape, but to survive. On a small, warped table near the wall, something caught his eye. A notebook, weathered leather cover, edges stiff with cold. He picked it up and opened it. Inside, rows of handwriting, dates, descriptions, codes, and then he stopped. His eyes locked on a single entry. Subject 12, male, German Shepherd, strong, obedient, high resale potential. He stared at the words. Resale. It wasn't a shelter. It was a trafficking ring. These dogs had been kept like inventory, evaluated, exploited. His hands began to shake. The notebook fell closed with a thud. Behind him, the shepherd let out a low, guttural growl. The man turned quickly. The dog stood at the door, body tense, ears pinned. "What is it?" he whispered. Then he felt it, the sensation of being watched. He looked out through the half-fogged window. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, still, watching. The man's breath caught. He stepped outside, the dog close beside him. "Who's there?" he called, voice cracking through the air. No answer, but the figure stepped forward. A man, late 40s, face drawn, hood pulled back, cold eyes. His gaze dropped to the notebook in the rescuer's hand. "That doesn't belong to you," the man said. His voice was flat, but there was something sharp beneath it. The rescuer didn't flinch. "These dogs don't belong to you either." A smirk twitched across the stranger's face. "You don't know what you're meddling with." And then, the shepherd stepped between them, silent, solid, shield. The shepherd's stance was clear. This man was a threat, and he would not pass. The stranger sneered. "Call him off," he muttered. His boots crunched slowly through the snow. "I'm not here to fight. Just give me the book." But the rescuer didn't move, didn't back down. He tightened his grip on the notebook. "You kept them in cages," he said. "You wrote about resale value like they were furniture." The man shrugged. "Dogs are useful. They're worth something. Better they work for someone than rot in the wild." The shepherd growled, low, deep, thunder beneath the surface. "They're not yours," the rescuer said. "They're not things." The stranger stepped forward, a flash of steel in his eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but never finished the sentence. The shepherd lunged, not to attack, but to warn. A bark, sharp, furious, final. The man flinched, stumbled back, his composure cracked. "That's enough," he snapped, voice unsteady. The rescuer held his ground. "You're going to pay for this." He lifted the notebook. "I have everything I need." The stranger's eyes darted to the forest, then back to the dog. And in that split second, he turned and ran. Branches snapped behind him. Snow flew from his boots. The shepherd gave chase, only for a moment, then stopped, panting, watching. He didn't want blood. He wanted him gone. The man dropped to his knees, wrapped his arms around the shepherd's neck. "Good boy," he whispered, voice breaking. "You protected me." The dog didn't bark, didn't move. He just licked the man's cheek. And for the first time since the blizzard began, his tail wagged. They walked back in silence. The forest behind them held its breath, as if even the trees knew something sacred had just occurred. The shepherd stayed close, shoulder brushing the man's leg, not out of fear, but choice. Back at the cabin, the younger pup stirred from sleep. His ears perked as the door creaked open. When he saw the older dog, he let out a soft whimper, a greeting, a check-in. "Are you okay?" The shepherd stepped forward, touched noses with the pup, then curled beside him in a gentle arc, shielding, cradling. The man removed his coat with shaking hands. He placed the notebook in a drawer. He would call the authorities, but not yet. Not before this moment was allowed to be still. He sat in his chair, watching the two dogs sleep. The younger's breathing was fast but calm. The older's steady, guarded, present. There were scars, yes, but the worst of the story was over. They were warm. They were safe. They were together. Later, he brewed coffee, and from his seat by the fire he whispered, "I think I'll call you Hero." The shepherd's eyes flicked open, just briefly, and he blinked, once, as if to say, "That name will do." That evening, the light faded gently behind the snowdrifts, casting a golden hue over the cabin walls. The man didn't speak much after naming the dog. He didn't need to. Hero lay beside the pup, one paw stretched protectively across the younger dog's flank. The fire bathed them both in soft amber, a scene that might have looked peaceful to anyone passing by. But to him, it was sacred. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full of breath, full of trust, full of something he hadn't felt in a long time, purpose. He watched the way Hero blinked slowly now, the way his ears twitched when the wind picked up outside, but didn't flinch, not anymore. He rested his hand gently on Hero's side. The dog didn't move away, no flinch, no retreat, just breathe, warm and steady. That was the breakthrough, not the moment of rescue, not the storm, but this. The moment the dog let him stay, morning came gently. No wind, no howling storm, just a soft glow through frosted glass and the rhythmic breath of two sleeping dogs. The man stood quietly at the window, coffee in hand. Outside, the forest had returned to stillness, but inside, something had changed. The younger dog, still unnamed, now followed Hero everywhere, shadowing his movements like a student with a favorite teacher. Hero, for his part, was patient. He guided without effort. He offered warmth, without words. The man watched them and realized this was not the ending of something. It was the beginning. Later that day, he sat on the floor with them. Hero rested his head on the man's lap, eyes half closed, the pup curled near his feet. He spoke softly, not expecting them to understand, but needing to say it anyway. "You saved each other. And somehow, you saved me too." Hero didn't move, but the tip of his tail thumped once against the rug. The cabin, once a haven of solitude, now felt alive. With each passing day, the silence grew warmer, not because the world had changed, but because it was shared now. The man filed a report, turned over the notebook to the authorities. They promised an investigation. He hoped they meant it, but even if they didn't, he had what mattered most. 2 dogs, one name, Hero, the other, still waiting, but not lost, not anymore. In time, the younger pup would gain strength. He already ran laps around the woodpile, tail wagging like a flag of freedom. Hero would watch him, content, occasionally rising to join in with slow, careful steps. And the man, he found himself laughing, actually laughing, at the way they played, at the way Hero still sat like a soldier, eyes sharp, as if guarding something precious. He was. He always had been. That night, the man lit a candle by the window, not for prayer, but for remembrance. Not all storms bring destruction. Some bring rescue, and sometimes the ones we think we save end up saving us instead.